I am joined today by Avinash Patel, a semi-retired businessman living in Southampton currently. Hello, Avinash.
Hello.
And thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's so good to have you here. Avinash, tell us a little bit more about where you were born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Kampala, Uganda, in East Africa. And until the age of 8, I was in Uganda. So my childhood was in Uganda. And then I was shifted to India with my maternal grandparent to study in India because education system in East Africa, according to my parents, were not good enough. And for economic reasons as well. And then I grew up in India until the age of 16. And then I went back to East Africa at the age of 16 after finishing my secondary education, and I joined a family business. Although I was a bright student, but my father was not keeping well, and they retained me there to continue the family business. And then age of 18, I came to UK as a refugee under Idi Amin's Exodus decree.
So tell us a little bit more about that. You said you left Uganda at 8 to go to India to study. Or who did you have there in India?
India, my parents obviously sent from East Africa to India at those days. They were sending most children back to India to learn more because Africa had not facilities to have a further education.
Right.
Because primary education was only there.
Okay.
Further education was not developed that good at the time.
And your grandparents were back in India?
They were in India, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I stayed with them and my brother was with me as well, and he went with my uncle in a city. He grew up in a city. I came to village. And I still remember my vivid memory of tropical beaming sunshine, dusty air, and rich culture village where I grew up. And obviously the secondary education started in a village, and it was all in Gujarati. There was English as it was a foreign subject.
English was foreign?
English was foreign subject then. Yeah. So I finished my studying in village. I molded myself with village life and religious way of living in a village. Very simple life. We didn't even have shoes as a kids. We grew up in half pants.
Yeah.
And but good food, freshly grown. So my grandparent was a farmer, so I was helping him during my breaks from the schools.
Yes.
We even had a buffalo, and I was milking buffalo.
All right.
And the milk is sold in town, and then it processed further. But it was amazing village life, very simple, innocent life. But the education that molded me there, I still remember good education of various subjects, and that molded me very well.
And did you specialize in something before you went back? Because you said you went back to Uganda.
After finishing my GCSE, they used to call SSE, I went back to Uganda on holidays. And I was supposed to come back to India and study further to university.
Right.
My teachers, my friends, they were saying that you're bright enough, you must become a doctor. And I wanted to do that. But during my holiday, my family needed me back home and they retained me in East Africa. So I felt that little bit of education, I missed out that opportunity. But in East Africa, while I was there, within 3-4 months, I realized I must study further. Having said that, then I took up an evening class of electrical engineering. It was run by a British institution, regulated by British education. And I was studying 3 evenings a night. And we had an English teacher there as well. So that's how I started. And at the same time, I was running full-time my father's business. It's an amazing journey from for 18-year boy at the time. on reflection if you look at it now.
So you talk about it was the family business you went back to. You stayed in Uganda.
Yes.
And that's in Kampala.
Yes.
And what did your parents do?
My parents came probably in 1930s. My father and his brothers, they went to East Africa as a single persons. And my father got married in, I think, 1950, 48 or 50. My mother was born in Uganda, and they got married. Then obviously I was born. And parents had a business of cycle. They had an exclusivity of cycle business of Hero Cycle. They had a distribution from Japan. They were importing and distributing all over Uganda.
All right.
So while I was a child, that was a business.
Yes.
But when I went back in 1971, I was 16 then. They had a retail business. Cycle business was folded up because the economy grew and they lost out, whatever. I don't know what happened. But in that retail business, I joined at the age of 16. Then came Idi Amin's decree to leave country within 18 months. So I didn't have chance to stay in Uganda that long. Uganda was, again, foreign country to me because although I was born there, but my childhood was not, it was there. But as a child, you don't remember much things. But my growing years in India, and then I had to come back to Uganda, and I lost my friends and everything. So I was kind of depressed as well at the time.
Right.
But then I picked up myself and learning my career further in electrical engineering, at the same time working in my father's business. And there was not a formal training in business. You just help them wherever they say.
So when did you and your parents leave?
Political environment was not right. Although Uganda got independence from British in 1962, it was a democratic country. But when I came in 1971 to Uganda, Idi Amin took over the country by means of, they call it coup. So the country was taken over by military.
Right.
So in that 18 months' time, Idi Amin was a ruthless dictator. And then he announced that all the families, all the Asians who are controlling the economy of the Uganda must leave within 90 days. And as a young man, obviously, we joked, impossible, not possible at all. And within 1 month, everybody started packing because they were coming with guns. Move, go. So my father was actually, who lived in that country, and he built that businesses, and he had a whole life career there.
Yeah.
He was very upset, and he never recovered from that, even after coming to UK. But he had to wind up whole life worth of business, and my mother, and we ended up in UK as a refugee.
Well, tell me about that journey. When did you leave and
1972, October 1970, 2nd of October, I remember very clearly.
Yes.
Because those are the dates that sort of mark on your life. We arrived in a charter plane from Entebbe to Stansted. And then middle of the night, we arrived at Stansted, dark, cold. As soon as you leave the plane, you suddenly shocked. You're not prepared for it. From tropical country to cold country. October was cold winter that year. And we were given blankets, we were given overcoats by the charities, I believe, and then we were put in a coach, and we again, travel journey was about 3 hours, 4 hours. So we arrived early morning in Somerset Yeovil Army Barracks, and we were welcomed by a group of volunteers, British volunteers, and we were shocked that time to see a white face. We had seen them before, but it was like a culture shock to me. And we went into barracks and we were fed British breakfast, which was alien to us at that time. So fried eggs and sausages and things like that. We were vegetarian and we never had experienced that. So we only went for chips. Things like that. So that kind of memories, and we stayed in that army barracks for about 1 week, and there were fellow Ugandans staying there. We were about 400 or 500 in that barracks, living in a army style, in bunk beds, and living together and eating in a mess. Showers were in communal shower. So it was quite a shock at that time.
So your journey to the UK, you left from Uganda, Kampala.
Yes.
And did you say by aeroplane?
By aeroplane, yes. Yeah. It was British charter flight, I think probably done by British government. Take the refugees out as quickly as possible before we get persecuted further.
1972.
1972.
And then you, from Stansted, you said you went to Stansted.
Yes, we
and
arrived.
then to Yeovil.
Yeovil, yes, Somerset. After staying 1 week or so, my uncle was already my mama, my mum's brother. He was studying here in Cambridge, and he said, we don't want to stay as a refugee. I'm sure we will find a place for my dad and my mother and us as kids in London. So he then wrote, at that time there were no telephones, so he wrote a postcard that is coming here to Yeovil, and he coming on Saturday afternoon, something like that. And we all packed up everything and came to London. And he had rented one room for all of us, 1 room and a kitchen, in a townhouse in Hackney, Stocknington, in a very, now I can see, it was very deprived area. And there was no bath in the house. We had to use public bath once a week, or you can use it every day, but you have to pay for it, 2 pence. And it was a culture shock for me. It was like a mile away from us, and we had to walk in that journey.
You had to walk
to the bath. So when we time in such a way that you finish your work and then come and have that bath and then walk back in that cold weather back to home.
So when you left Yeovil and you went to London with your uncle, did he have his own place, or you said he was studying?
No, he was student himself.
He was a student as well. Right.
So he just guided us. Come to London. There are a lot of opportunity here,
right.
And if you remain in a camp, he didn't like the idea of staying in as a refugee.
Right.
I'm sure we will find something and we'll do something together because he knew my dad very well. He was a businessman and so on.
Yes.
So we said we'll settle something here. And then we only came with £50 as a family. And coming here with £50 and start all over again was very difficult. But my father never recovered from his loss of country. And he became very ill in this country. He suffered from asthma in the cold weather. And it was hard for parents to accept. For us kids, it was shock, but we were growing, so it was new challenge for us. And we obviously, rest is history.
Tell us your most vivid memories of home.
As I said, Uganda was a tropical country. We grew up in sunshine. Weather was not an issue at all. Every day is a bright day. Open fields, open school friends, simple, fun life in Uganda. And then in India, village life again was very cultural life. People lived in very good harmony. Although people were poor, but they had a culture and they had feeling for each other. And that embedded me as a real human. I bonded myself as a poor child of a village life, and I understood the value of whole life. That was a journey that is still with me, and that is still keeping me going. The value of life, and whether you're rich or poor, but connecting with families, connecting with culture is most important, and that is my big strength.
So those formative years, both in Uganda and then moving to India to go to school from 8 to 16, were quite important years for you.
Yes, that is a best childhood memory that I have. But most is that my grandparents, my grandfather was my teacher, and he taught me right side of the life. And all that values that I carry even today, I preserve that to pass it on to my family, my friends, my community. Obviously, coming to UK, I feel that culture is in me, and I want to keep it. I want to preserve that.
And would you say that these are your last memories of home?
No. You have that feeling to go back one day. You want to go back there. So in 1982, I was a little bit stronger economically, and I thought, let me go back to Uganda to visit my birthplace. And I went back. Army was ruled then, but I had a problem of immigration because I was a refugee. I had a United Nations passport.
You had a refugee passport when you came to England, or
yes.
you got that here when you arrived?
No, it was given by United Nations back in Uganda when we left, because I was Uganda citizen.
Right.
So Uganda citizens were not allowed to leave country. So family was going to split. My father was British passport holder for a moment.
Okay.
Myself, my two sisters, and my brother were Uganda passport. So we were Uganda citizens, so we can live in that country. Idi Amin wanted only British holders. British government won't give us, after 5 years, naturalization process was very hard, tough. So somebody told me, you go and get your Uganda passport valid, and then you can say Uganda passport, then you apply for naturalization, then it will be easier for you. So I have had distance connection back in Uganda. I used that, went back to Uganda to get my passport, Uganda passport, valid passport. So that's why I went back there. By that time I had grown further 10 years, so it was happy to see my own country and appreciate what I had there. I stayed, I think, about 4 weeks. And then I traveled a bit more in Uganda. And it was amazing journey for me at that point. As for India, because I grew up as a young adult, India is still in my second home country. And because of the culture and the ties with whole community, whole relationship, people living all over the world. So for culture reason, wife is from India. My kids, I take them to India. So I visit India quite often. So that link of India is still there.
Yeah.
But Uganda link is broken. Although I can say I'm Ugandan, but in reality, it's a far, far behind. But I want to take my kids there one day. If all go, my grandchildren, I want to take there.
Yes.
That this is where we grew up.
Tell us about your journey to Southampton and what were your initial impressions?
Southampton, again, after staying 9 months in London, I applied because I had a little bit of electrical engineering done in Uganda. My uncle came and he said, open the yellow pages. There are about 50 odd electrical contractor. Simple letter that you are Uganda refugee. I have done first year of engineering. Is there a vacancy for me? Most importantly, right, Uganda refugee. So at that point, government had created opportunity for the Uganda refugees. So employers were encouraged to take refugees. And one company out of 50 wrote me back and took me for an interview.
So wait a minute, you wrote 60 letters.
Yes.
And one company responded to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And then I was interviewed and I got the job. So I was on the moon. And I was taken as an apprentice electrician. I remember my first day when I went on the job. I sort of suited, booted, I put tie on and so on. Then I went to the office of the contractor and the van took us to the building site. And the foreman there was laughing at me. He's going to work on a building site and he's come with... So he understood that he's a foreigner, so he will do that. Because the impression of us back in Uganda was that, you have to be
in a
proper
suit.
British.
So even on a building site, you thought they wear suits.
So first day it was like getting familiarized and the foreman was very nice actually. Yeah. And he then made me understand things that you'll be working in muds and climbing ladders and things like that. Yeah. So that's how my working life started in Britain, and I've worked as an apprentice in North London, and it was 7 pence an hour as an apprentice. 7 pence an hour.
7 pence an hour.
7 pence an hour. So butter was like 1p, and pennies were still old pennies.
Yeah.
Reflecting back now, I think how it was possible, it was there. Then I worked 9 months, and then the accommodation we were living in is only 1 bedroom where I was sleeping in a kitchen. And then I heard that other refugees are in London now. There are places available for refugees. So some of my relatives contacted me. So why don't you apply for or resettlement board? Uganda resettlement board. There was a riverbank near Parliament. He said they got office there, go and visit there. So one Saturday afternoon, I went there, filled in all the forms.
Yes.
And after about 6 or 8 weeks later, I received a letter from Uganda Resettlement Board that the Southampton City Council Social Services will rehouse you. Do you want to move to Southampton? Again, I was a young man, 18 years old. I had a responsible father, mother, 2 sisters. Sister was going college in London. And then following Saturday, we wrote a letter back to social services and we said we are coming so and so. So people guided us to take a train from Waterloo to Southampton. So we wrote that letter that we'll be arriving 1 o'clock Saturday in Southampton.
Yes.
And we were greeted by one of the employee of social services, and he took us around to see our accommodation. And it was a church building in St. Mary's.
Okay.
It was disused by vicars. Very old building, big garden, but it needed upgrading. But they said you can have it. And after seeing 4-bedroom ground floor house, it was must take it.
Yes.
But what about job? How are we going to live here?
Yes,
because I was the only one working.
Oh, right.
And how are we going to manage? Then it was a lot of thinking for me to do. I'm going to move whole family to Southampton without don't know anybody. But then social services came along and took me to another house who were fellow Ugandans who were living in Southampton. So there were about 5 or 6 families already living under this refugee scheme by various organizations at the time. So we went and met them, and they said, yeah, come down, it's a nice place. And most important for me at that time was that they told me that Southampton is the warmest place in England and always 5% above rest of the country in temperature-wise.
Yeah.
So this is the best place for my father. Again, one Saturday afternoon, took a van and came to Southampton, and I was unemployed again. And that was hard for me, that I had a job and suddenly I don't have a job. So for 3 months I was unemployed. But by that time I had learned a bit more of British way of life. And again, Yellow Pages opened all those contractors and wrote again. I think there were about 30 odd contractors in that Yellow Pages at the time.
Yeah.
But same letter went to all 30. Again, one chance. And Tony Balcom was the manager, engineer. He interviewed me and he said, okay, you got the job. So I was over the moon again after 3 months of...
And was that working or was that apprenticeship still?
Apprenticeship.
Because you were still learning in London when you came down, when you
Yes.
got the opportunity.
Yeah. So basically my apprentice record was transferred here.
Okay, right.
And then I was made a similar job here. The apprenticeship was that you go 1 day to college and 4 days you work on building sites.
Okay.
So I was studying in Southampton Technical College.
Okay.
At that time, electrical department was in Woolston. And to go to Woolston, you had to cross ferry. There was a water ferry, floating bridge, they used to say.
So there wasn't a bridge you could drive over or walk across?
No, that Itchen bridge that is there. I've seen it built. But before that, we were crossing by ferry.
Right.
Because my college was on the other side of the... And I was living in St. Mary's. So it was easy for me to walk and go to college.
Yeah.
And Southampton life began like that. And then gradually, as I learned the city, my office was in Shirley, Oakley Road, and we used to go there, and from there we used to go to various sites. And 30-mile radius, I used to travel for my work, by bus, by train, or by colleague's car. So first 3 years I think I did that. And then I got my British license here in October 73, I believe, yes. And my first car I bought, it was worth £50.
It's fantastic.
And having that freedom of have car, that was something good.
Yes.
So first weekend, I wanted my parents to take everywhere. So in a car, we went Brighton, we went to Bournemouth.
Wonderful.
On the, as a young man, you have a car and then you want to take your parents. And after a few months of experience of driving, I sort of drove to London, and then there was no navigation. You had to use A to Z, learn. And then I became bolder and bolder and started traveling to Leicester, Birmingham, places like that. So first year was exploring England. That was in 74, 73, 74. And people of Southampton were very kind. They had time for each other. And then gradually I mingled in with Indian community. There were few Indian community here. So we used to have a gathering in Deen Irigar school. And that's where my journey began as a community person. So I used to help community winding up carpet, putting things, tabla, everything in the car and so on. And that's where I met other people of community. And my journey to Vedic society started then.
And who would you say supported you in those early days?
Initially, city of Southampton. social services. They made us understand how the British way of life works, going to school, arranging English classes for my mother, in terms of getting used to the living of British way of life. The integration began then, from then on. I had a reverend next door to me. They were a kind family, they were my neighbors. So it was very difficult for me to understand their way of life and for us to have our own culture with us. So we were exchanging food at the time. So they used to bring mince pies at Christmas and things like that. And we used to then give curry. The word curry was different then. Now everybody knows what curry is. But it was like food exchange that made us understand each other in that family environment, both myself and next door vicar, the reverend. And that was my first kind of family integration. Then weekends I used to meet the rest of the Indian community, and that community was not from Gujarat, they were from different part of the India. That's when I realized that British Raj had this kind of influence all over. For a small mind at the time, you think, why this guy is here? I am from Uganda because I've been pushed here. But there were already immigrant community from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Punjab, from other countries, Trinidad, Caribbean, all they were here. And for a small mind, it was very difficult. But as I grew, I realized the British Raj was all over the world. And that connection has brought them to UK.
Right. And it's almost like what you're describing is that multicultural melting pot where you're meeting people for the first time from Pakistan, the Caribbean, different places.
Exactly. And that journey began of multicultural. You're absolutely right. That everybody living back home, back in India, they were living in their own pot, within their own culture and within their own then environment. You haven't seen the world. And then suddenly you come to UK and you see people from all over the world. And host is obviously English community.
Yes.
But they are all working together. And gradually integration, you understand what integration is then.
Fascinating. It's fascinating. I have to tell you, Avinash, it is a fascinating description of those early days
yes.
of integration, and even just the word curry as well, which may have been a shocking word to the population, the way you describe it.
Yeah.
So on that subject, what's the early experiences then of the food? Tell us a little bit more about that and the job. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. I was born vegetarian, and up to that point, I was vegetarian.
Right.
So initially, I used to take my food from home when I go to work. And when you take sandwich made by vegetarian food,
yes,
obviously masala is going to be there.
Yeah.
So when you open your box in a canteen or said we are sitting, smell, and everybody says, oh, it's smelling. Oh, it's bad. Curry is smelling. The garlic is smelling.
Right.
So I had to be kind of taken back.
Yeah.
And it was shock to me at that time. So I was careful. And people used to take mickey out of me. I was working with white people mostly.
Yes.
And then as a young man, you don't understand this thing. And it came to me, blimey, what am I doing wrong here? I'm eating my food, they're eating their food. It was sandwich, so I was eating sandwich as well. Not roti, because roti was not taken there. But anyway, so that was the food first experience. And then gradually I started taking less smelly food and started integrating cheese into it, and then eating after tea time, wherever I worked, mostly there were canteens. Lunchtime there were canteens. The employer used to provide canteens for all the employees.
Oh, right.
So as a contractor, we were allowed to go and eat there.
Yeah.
So early morning, 10 o'clock, they have breakfast, and they have fried eggs, sausages, bacon, things like that. So fried eggs I started eating first. Fried egg and chips and beans. That was, when you're a hungry young man, you have that. And gradually, one day, the guy next door, he said, try this sausage. And then with a lot of courage, I said, okay, I'll try. I try a little bit. So he cut a bit from his and he gave it to me. I liked it. So first time I remember that I've eaten sausage and I was feeling guilty inside me. Yeah.
So that was the time you stopped being a vegetarian.
A vegetarian, that's right. And then it still wasn't like my food, but gradually I created the taste for non-veg. The sausage, then came bacon, and then came chicken. Lunchtime, then they make other curry. Chicken curry started. I was having just vegetarian, like cheese on bread, things like that. But then the one day I saw chicken curry there. Chicken curry, and I thought, oh, that's good. So I tried chicken there. So over the years, the taste of non-veg got developed in that early days of my life. And my family was not, I was open about it, and I told my family that I'm eating meat. I started eating meat, and I have to, my friends are eating and so on. My family was very happy to accommodate that. Although my mother told me, don't eat meat on Agyaras, that is special day.
Yes.
Diwali, and all festival days. Don't eat meat on those days.
Yes.
So that embedded in me that meat is still alien for Hindus.
And that's an interesting international perspective. You know, that's a really interesting perspective. So a lot of it is the integration, not just in the job and learning the language as you go on, but the food change, your taste for it change, your acceptance that this is part of an adaptation.
Adaptation, absolutely.
That's really interesting.
And to take one step forward about alcohol.
They didn't serve that in the canteens then, did they?
No, but when there is Friday, everybody gets paid. And my colleagues go for a drink.
At the pub or something?
At the pub somewhere.
Right.
I never went.
Right.
I straight went home. As then Christmas came, and they said, you have to come. It's Christmas. You have to come.
Yes.
So I think second Christmas, 1974 or 75, I went to Christmas do. Because we were breaking up like 3 days before Christmas.
Yes.
And I thought, these holidays, let me go. My friend Derek, I still remember him. He was a nice guy to me. And he said, come with me. You'll buy lemonade.
Yes.
And then gradually they were drinking. I said, okay, then I heard Guinness. And I said, Guinness is good for you. So he said, you have a Guinness. So I had half pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
And that's where my alcohol journey began. And when I went home, I was kind of merry. It was nice. I felt good. And this is how it started.
So it started in England.
And I know the pub in Regent's Park Road, opposite BAT factory.
Do they still exist there?
The BAT...
The pub.
The pub exists, yes. Pub is there.
Right.
And BAT factory is still there.
Right.
Manufacturing gone, but the research department is still there. I worked there. The community had grown a little bit bigger. People moved in from other parts of the city to Southampton. The Gujarati community or the Hindu community had grown a little bit bigger.
Right.
So by year 75, 76, I was more involved in community. You need a friends, and you have to make of similar culture. Monday to Friday, you're working with your British colleagues.
Yes.
But you are still alien. Inside, you feel that this is not my right place. For work purpose, you mingle, you talk, you get on with your work. But coming home, you're your own person, you want. So my Southampton youth began with Asian community. So we had Hindu Punjabis, mostly Hindus and Gujaratis, and festivals being celebrated, somebody's birthday being celebrated.
Yes.
So when we go to birthdays, that's one interesting point. Somebody's 21st birthday, I remember we celebrated in St. Michael's Church. And again, he was similar background. He had few colleagues come from his work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I saw first time that, yes, you can bring your friends and other culture in your outside festival.
And you could bring them into your culture.
Culture, yes.
So it's you're interestingly describing this integration, not just with you, but with your English friends. Into your culture over the weekend.
Yes,
so
yes.
Really interesting. Mm-hmm.
And that part, by that time, we were enough understood the life and understood the way of life of Britain.
So that's an interesting discussion, Avinash. You know, you're working during the week, you have that integration with your colleagues, but then when you have your birthday parties and you have your personal get-together, you could invite them as well. And that's a bit of integration as well for you, right?
Yes, it was quite a learning curve in terms of bringing colleagues into your life. We work with them during weeks, and we understand their way of eating, their way of living. Then at festivals and at private parties, we thought, let's bring colleagues, one or two colleagues in who
Yes.
are quite friendly with us.
Yes.
And best part was that they were eager to learn our culture. And when we talked to them, it was alien to them because they have never experienced anything like this. And most of them lived in Southampton. They never traveled more than 30, 40-mile radius of Southampton. So for them to understand our way of life, where we come from and how we did it, it was fascinating for them at that point.
Yes.
So gradually, more and more people started coming in our life from outside our culture. And food, both ways. We became more eating their food, and they started eating our food. So like I said earlier, the baked bean was our best breakfast, being a vegetarian.
Yeah.
And I still, baked beans on toast is my still favorite.
It's your favorite compromise English breakfast.
Yes.
No, it's good, and look at where curry has come from. I mean, it's still the national dish of England. I don't think anybody will